Well, I'm Eric Grimshaw, President of the Panton Football Club, and I'd like to just welcome you all coming today. I think there's no doubt this is a momentous occasion in the club's history. 1955 being our last grand final, and the first time ever we've had both our first and reserves teams in a grand final. So we're going to see something fantastic today, and let's all, I know what we're all hoping for, and that's 2 Premiership Cups. That's what we're all here about, and the expectations there that we're going to do that, and that bus home is going to be unbelievable. But again, thanks for coming. I'd like to just also, while I'm speaking, is thank Epping Football Club and Rod and Floss for the way they put on the breakfast. If we could just put our hands together for those guys, thank you. Next, we're going to just have a quick chat to Jeremy Bourke, who's the CEO of the NFL, and I'd like to ask Jeremy if he'd come up, and then we're going to hear from a panel or a series of, come around this way, Jeremy, a series of interviews from the 50s and 60s, from the 70s, 80s, and the 90s and the 2000s. So we've got players here that are going to come up, and we're going to ask for questions from the audience, but we want to hear a little bit about the history of our football at our great club. So look, we'll just start with Jeremy. Jeremy, thanks for coming.
No worries. Thanks
for joining us here. We know this is going to go viral tonight once we put it on the internet. But
haven't even done any makeup or anything. That's right.
Look, Jeremy, how's from the NFL's point of view, how's the season shaped up? 2013 season. Been successful, or what are you thinking?
Well, it's been a terrifically successful season as far as we're concerned. Two teams today, or 2 clubs today, which have had I suppose a little drought of success for a period of time. We'll have the opportunity to address that situation today. So that's an enormous positive for not only the clubs but also the league. To have more clubs enjoying success, that's the whole idea of Division 3, is to spread the opportunities right across our clubs. Today we've got Watsonia coming in who finished last year and have really put in a tremendous amount of work around their club and have the opportunity to go from last to first in the space of 12 months.
We're not going to imagine that, but
I won't dwell on that too much.
The opportunity's there, I guess. Yep.
The opportunity is there, and certainly Panton Hill, who have had a long period without that opportunity. We had that opportunity last year, but a long period without that success. And certainly you've got 2 clubs who certainly deserve their place here today. And while we're in the confines of this room, let's hope that Panton Hill are able to address that drought and come home with a strong win.
Absolutely. And I guess talking about the introduction of 3rd Division, and it has been a long time. 1955 was our last grand final, and in 1970 was a grand final opportunity that we missed out on. And then the next time that we really had a big chance was, correct me, there'll be people, it was against Greensborough in 2004. 2004, is that correct? Yep, 2004, and that was in obviously 2nd Division then, and for us to win our first final in second Division against a big club like Greensborough was our mini grand final. And in effect, that's what 3rd Division's brought about, the opportunity to be able to hit the big clubs and be able to be successful and have the ultimate success of a premiership possibility. So 3rd Division, in my opinion, has been a great thing. I guess the question everybody's asking though with 3rd Division, how do we get some more teams involved?
Well, I mean, new teams are always a complicated issue, a complicated path, because one, we've got to determine whether there's an opportunity to bring an existing club or you start a new club. There has been, in terms of a new club, there's been a philosophy over the years to actually wait till someone comes to the league and says, we want to start a club. We're now in the process of determining whether that's the right course, whether we have the patience to be able to wait for someone to come to us. We now think there's an opportunity maybe for us to actually actually start a club ourselves and then advertise for people to come in and drive it. And that's what was done in the Western region this year. They had 2 clubs, Manor Lakes and Century Lakes, where the league decided, well, we're going to start a club. And created the club and then advertised for people to come in and drive it.
Yeah.
And Manor Lakes are now playing off in a grand final in their first year and started with 9 teams. So 9 teams in that was the 3 senior teams and 6 junior teams for a club starting in their first year. So I suppose that, again, it's always been a wait and see approach to say, well, who's out there that wants to start? Well, we're looking at turning that around and saying, right, what are the opportunities to present? Have we got some facilities here in our growth areas that we can access? And then we might be able to start a club up from scratch. That's one option. The other option is to talk to our clubs, for instance, Lorimer, who are in a fast-growing area. Got the junior club established. They've got a vets team. So their natural progression is maybe to move into senior football. Problem for them is they've got to wait until their facilities are right and suitable because they haven't really, the council just hasn't quite addressed those issues there. And then the other one is to have conversations with existing clubs. For instance, we've got King Lake and we've got Wallen, who their juniors play in our competition. We pick up the phone and we talk to them and say, what's your status? At the moment, they're happy to stay in their respective competitions, but we always keep those lines of communication open.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Jeremy. Let's have a great day. Go Hills.
Good luck. All the best.
Jeremy, I got a question for you.
Sure.
When we played Watsonia here a couple of weeks ago, I was absolutely amazed after the game to learn that there was no yellow, no red, no 50-metre penalties. Were you pleased when you heard that? Were you aware of that? Because that game was played, it was probably one of the fairest and one of the best games of footy that I've seen for a long, long time.
I mean, we've been immensely pleased with the behaviour of the players and the spectators throughout the whole final series. There wasn't a yellow card in any of the Division 1 or 2 or 3 senior games over the first weekend of all the finals. And I think what we've got now is we've got to a stage where our football is at such a level. I think players are just too focused on concentrating on what they've got to do to win the game rather than worrying about remonstrating or blueing or things that are maybe happening off the field. So, and it says a lot about the standard of community footy, that our players are now well drilled, and the standard of coaching that's being applied in our games is such a level that they don't have time for anything else. They've got to focus on what they've got to do, otherwise they're letting their team down. So I think we see, one is our expectations these days are a lot tighter on our players, that we expect behavioural standards to be at a really high level, but also our standard of play means that I think we're by default, they don't have time for anything else or energy.
Well, I believe it's a feather in the league's cap, to be perfectly honest, to have achieved what they've achieved in such a short period of time. And I congratulate you and the league for it.
Appreciate that.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. Great. Thank you. Thanks. I'd like to introduce Charlie O'Day, for those who don't know. Charlie's a life member of the club. Lived all your life in Panton Hill, Charlie?
Yeah.
All his life in Panton Hill, and was around at the 55 side. Stand up, Charlie. He's still wearing the jacket that they struck for the side in 55 and the tie. Mind you, it's such an ugly tie, you wouldn't wear it anywhere else but here today.
It's sensational.
It's a sensational tie. And can I tell a story before Charlie talks about it? You'll see on the logo, it's a snow-capped mountain.
And I can remember one of the blokes from the 55, I said, how on earth did that happen? And they went into the Leviathan to
Get him down, will you please, mate? His head's gone off the screen.
Sorry.
I warned you about that before we
They
started.
went into the Leviathan in the city to get the jackets made up, the commemorative jackets. And the tailor said, well, what do you want on the pocket? And I said, what do you mean? Just Panton Hill Premiers? No, you've got to have a logo. And no one had any idea what to put on it. So the tailor, in his wisdom, thought, Panton Hill. There must be a hill with snow up there, and that's why it's on the logo. So nothing to do with it. Charlie, the 55 Premiership side, very briefly, or the actual win. Tell us about that day.
Well, first up, I'd like to see you blokes come up with this today, so you can wear a jacket like this with the year on it that you won the Premiership. We'll get back to the old footy game. Yeah, all the players played beautiful. Teddy Sattler, Jimmy Bourke, you name them, they all played a beautiful game. They hit Donny Brook that hard, they didn't know what happened to him in the finish.
Not Ted.
Ted's wife, Joan, sticking up for him.
It was a beautiful game. Everyone played, and you couldn't have got a better team that day.
There was only 4 points in it,
Yeah,
Charlie.
in it.
It was up and down all day, and I remember that a lot of our players thought that Donnybrook were the better side, but we were just better on the day and stuck together. Is that
A couple
about
of
right?
times it looked like Donnybrook had us beat, but no, the boys fought back and we ended up winning.
Charlie, can you just tell us about the lead up to the game and the training regime and the diet and the exercise that you would have done prior leading up to it?
Quite different to what they do these days, I'm afraid. I know they used to do their bit of training on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
That's about all we used to do.
Did you have a meal after training?
No, not back in them days.
No.
And there were no rooms, Charlie. You changed in the hall with kerosene lamps. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes we did, but then they altered the football ground. They made it a lot bigger than what it used to be, so you can imagine how small it used to be. Teddy Sattler nearly kicked from one end to the other.
And the town got really behind you and enjoyed the victory.
Oh yeah, it was good crowd.
Good crowd, good party.
Good crowd. And when we used to go to the football then, we used to have Billy Patterson, who was one of the players. He used to drive his old truck. We'd all sit in the back of an open truck going over to Donnybrook or Wallen, wherever we had to go. You know, it's good. As I said, the things have changed. To look at the club rooms you've got at Panton Hill now, it's a credit to what they used to have. Had a little box. Oh, the change room wouldn't be much bigger than this little bit here. You cram everyone in there, but no, it was good.
One of the, whilst it was the 55 Premiership side, I think from 54 to 60, we were in the finals every year.
Oh, yeah, it's
and so we must have had a good side, but we only cracked it the one time, Charlie.
Only cracked it the once.
So a good standard comp all around us.
Yeah.
Is it? So
Yeah, it was a good.
What puts the 55 win in perspective? It was against very tough sides, and
Yeah, they were tough times.
yeah. So all finals and only one flag.
And we had some real rough teams at them time too.
How many teams were in the competition?
Oh yeah, Donnybrook, Whittlesea, Wallen, Hurstbridge,
You mentioned Mernda,
Kinglake, Mernda, yeah, used to play under the...
Diamond Creek.
no, Diamond
Mernda
Creek
were called
wasn't
Plenty Rovers, weren't
it?
they?
Yeah, plenty of
Yeah.
that. We've had Kinglake, Flowerdale,
St Andrews.
That'd be a long way in the back of the truck. Flowerdale.
it was when it was an open bloody truck.
Yeah, middle of winter.
In the middle of winter.
And coming home would be cold.
But when we used to play up at Flowerdale, you used to have to get changed in the hotel and run about 100 yards to the footy ground. And if you kicked the ball over the boundary, it'd go into the King Parrot Creek and you'd have to swim down the creek to get the ball back.
I suppose that'd be a warm-up, Charlie. Would that be a warm-up then, would it? That'd be the warm-up before the game.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was a big difference of what you've got now.
And the dancers in the hall under kerosene lamps.
Now you're talking.
Now you're talking.
Now you're talking.
Tell us what you're allowed to. Remember, this might go to children, Charlie, so just tell us about the dancers
it's,
after the games.
Panton Hill Football Club was most probably the best known team in the comp for their turnouts at the hall, their dances. Hall was always packed. Best coffee you've ever had. Old Ben Tosh used to bring up the milk. We used to boil the milk in an old copper in the back room. Cakes, many cakes, cream cakes and that as you could get. And I'll tell you something funny. After the dance, if there was cakes left over, they were these big high sponges, we'd have a Dutch auction to get money for the club. You'd auction these cakes. Mick Carnes, who's coming here today, they tell me, one night he paid 10 quid for a cake, and he got it and he just come up and went boom like that in someone's head. And that started it. To be on everyone on after the cake, so we'd make good money out of the...
Now, Shirley's here. Did you meet her at one of those dances? And what sort of dancer was Charlie, Shirley?
Ah, I never had time for dance.
He didn't dance.
No,
I was too busy.
knocked me lollies off at the footy.
All right.
Now, one more question. I've heard a yarn about Toshy, and he was the he used to run the time, didn't he, for the
Old Ben.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Can you tell me how he used to have this run the siren, how the siren worked in those days without the electricity? You know?
Yeah, he had the old cowbell who used to bring, and that was it. He'd rattle the old cowbell.
And I heard he used to go around the boundary on a horse. Is that right? With his cowbell, and that marked quarter time and half time. Is that true?
Yes, he used to have his old horse there sometimes.
I just wanted to check on that. I thought someone was teasing.
He'd never ever miss ringing that bell, old Ben.
All right, well...
We'd have a dance, and Ben would be the door.
Yeah, on the door.
Man on the door.
Yeah.
An hour.
Well, the starting point that Charlie made was that he and everyone else from 55 really wants today to for us to take the mantle, for the young kids today to take the mantle. But that community spirit's still in the club, Charlie, but it's been a delight to hear so long ago for most of us, and it's great to have you here today. Would you welcome and thank Charlie O'Day?
It's a pity I can't get to the club more than that.
Yeah. I'd like to introduce Ron Dwyer now. We just heard about what a great era of success the 50s were. Like all clubs, there's ups and downs, and we've certainly had our period of downs in the 60s and 70s. Other than the grand final in 1970, which we should have won but lost to Hurstbridge, were a pretty dark time because of the town was changing, the border works was going to flood the town, families moved out, hard to attract players. It's fair to say that in that period, a lot of people thought that a small club like Panton Hill would fold the way that St Andrews did, that Donnybrook did, and other powerhouses of the 50s. There's a lot of reasons why it didn't. Again, it gets back to the community spirit. But there was one bloke who emerged from the committee side who really kept the club alive in those 60s and 70s. He managed to cajole people around to help him, get the community behind him, and somehow drag players from all parts of Melbourne to come up to some godforsaken spot called Panton Hill because we couldn't get enough locals playing. It's a credit that we didn't fold and that we're still here today. So I'd like to introduce a life member known to all of us, the slowest milky in the town, Ronnie Dwyer. Ronnie, how hard was it when you came up and got involved in the 70s and 80s?
Well, probably not all that hard, Tony, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So that there was no rule book, and you just went and you learnt as you went along. So I guess the main thing was there was a good number of
Nothing's
people.
changed, let me tell you.
I've noticed that. Yeah, no, but there was a good bunch of guys around on the committee at that time, mainly players, and they were great because I really never knew anyone, so I never had any hookups with this division or that division, and so I was able to sort of perhaps go down the centre. But I did focus around that there were a lot of good guys, the fellows like Graham Gorse, Benny Elliott, Alex King, and the guys that sort of run around him more. But the thing is, you just sort of learnt to run, and it was a difficult time, but there was a lot of fun times as well.
We were Part of the reason we struggled, Ron, is there were so many suburban sides coming into the Panton Hill League on their way to seeing the next step up to the Diamond Valley League, while we remained, as ever, the small country town. How did you keep the spirits up of the players, or how did you recruit players in the face of such strong sides of Guinness?
Well, I think when you're talking about that, you're going back into the early 80s, and you had the likes of Northcote Park and Bundoora actually started their careers in the Panton Hill League. And it also helped the demise of the Panton Hill League because they were just so strong that they actually sort of wiped every team they played, basically. And then, of course, they went on into the Diamond Valley and into First Division. Look, I just think it was a credit to the players themselves as well. I mean, the guys that pulled the boots on, they just stuck with the club, and there was an enormous amount of good blokes playing for the club. And I think that Panton has always had that. And the boys that pulled the boots on were the ones that helped keep the club going. So, it was difficult, but, we actually were the only club that actually beat Northcote Park at Panton Hill. I think you might have been playing that game, Tony.
Yeah, it was a great day, like a final.
He was a young lad, yeah.
Backline won it, Backline won it, did it, Tony?
Yeah.
He used to love getting a kick. He used to put him at full back, and sometimes the scores were pretty horrific, and they'd be whatever they were. The points used to match the goals, and there was a lot of goals. So Tony had a lot of work at full back. So he was a bit trimmer in those days too.
Ronnie, what year did you actually come to Panton Hill? Like, you arrived with Gwen and you set up family here?
That was in 68.
68?
Yeah.
And what year did you actually start playing for, get involved with the football club?
Well, I guess when my eldest son played in the under-17s, and that probably would have been around about 76, I suppose.
Right, okay.
75, 76. I didn't actually get involved on the committee until I think it was about 78 or 79. And so that's when I sort of got involved.
Which is about the same time that Tony came to the area.
Well, that's true, and...
Can't help about luck.
No, actually it was good luck. It was to sort of tell a bit of a story about Tony, which he probably doesn't tell that very often. But,
is that another ad break, John?
Anyway, it got to a stage where, a few of the boys were getting a bit tired, and you do get to a stage where you can do a certain amount of work, and the club needs to alter, needs to change. And so there was two things. We had to look for sort of better coaching in a sense, and also for someone else to take over and bring the club up. Anyway, there was this particular person who had the credentials of actually being a coach at some stage, but more so being a future president. And so the committee decided their wisdom will sort of have a chat to this bloke, and so I got the job of having a talk to him at the Panton Hill pub. And this particular person had a lot of reasons why he couldn't do the job. His work, he had a very high-profile job, and time commitments and whatever. So he got this list of about a dozen things that he couldn't do. So I went back to the committee, and I said, OK, this is what he can't do, but this is what he can do. And so we elected him, and he wasn't even there. You remember that, Tony?
No, I wasn't there.
So that's Tony got involved in there. So that was an interesting story, but he gave us a lot of reasons why he couldn't do it, and we accepted all them, and one of the wisest things we've ever done.
Ronnie, some of the characters in that time, and I think of which spans every era until the last 10 years, Ronnie Archer. Who are the other characters around the town and the club in those times?
Well, I think one that comes to mind quickly is a fellow called John Morrison, and he coached us, and I think when Tony was playing as well, it would have been. Yeah, and it was my job to interview John Morrison, and he'd played Carlton under-19s and reserves, but he wasn't coming as a player, and through my brother I got onto him and sort of see if he was interested in coaching, because he was a pretty smart sort of bloke. So, cut a long story short, he came home, and we met him at home on the Sunday morning at the end of the season, and he said, I don't know if I want to coach or not. He said, can you show me the results of the previous year? So I did that. I realised that in future I would never do that again, but anyway, so he looked at it, he said, he said, if I improve you blokes by 300%, we'll still lose by 10 goals. So anyway, I said, well, look, Michael, that was his nickname originally, was how about coming up the ground and a few of the boys there and say hello. So we duly went up to the ground and a few of the boys were in the club rooms and we pulled up, beside the ground, and he said, oh, that's fantastic. He said, that's a great car park. He said, where's the ground? Anyway, he duly took the job on, and he was a guy that led us to beat Northcote Park, and we run Bundoora to 3 points in that year. And we had a fantastic year, and that was the year that Bundoora and Northcote Park went to Diamond Valley. And unfortunately, he'd done such a good job with us that he was poached by the association, association league.
Werribee.
So
Sunshine.
Yeah, Sunshine.
All right, we're probably running out of tape. There's a lot of people who will take great delight if we win today, who've contributed many years ago in many ways, and from a personal point of view, I think one of those who will deserve every happiness he'll get from it if it eventuates. Ronnie Dwyer has been fantastic for the club, so would you thank Ronnie for his... Another commercial.